we'll be showcasing this match in the middle. Yang Da-Wei versus Joaquin Salerno. That one's going to be really interesting. We were taking a look earlier. I'm very excited to showcase it.
Yeah, it's very exciting to showcase. It's a couple teams that, one is a bit more familiar, and the other one, which we're going to see here with Yang Da-Wei, is something that's kind of like a mix and match of teams that have done very, very well. And something that we both really enjoyed off screen was that Zapdos, because it just seems that now, because Arcanine is a 5-time tournament champion, you've got to have a tool for it. And sometimes the best tool is just slap something with Defiant or Competitive onto your 6. And Zapdos is one of those ones that gets Defiant and also has such a niche role that it can, really catch people off guard. But of course, that doesn't show that Yang Da-Wei is relying on these tactics. Of course, if we look at their accomplishments, they've got the Taiwan National Championships top 4 in 2022, the Taipei Regional Finalists in 2023, you got the Kaohsiung Regional Champion in 2023, as well as the Taiwan National Champion this time around. So let's see if they can apply that status and that power to this World Cup stage, especially with quite a hyper-offensive team they've got in front of us today.
There are few things more terrifying than an unconventional, really powerful offensive team played by a brilliant player, and you can see from the accomplishments in the team here that that's exactly what Da-Wei is bringing into this match. One thing that I think is an interesting counterpoint is the team that Joaquin has brought into this match. I think that it gives some interesting counterpoints to the options that Da-Wei has.
It does give some interesting counterpoints, because Joaquin is running something that's a bit more conventional, a bit more similar to what we have seen over the past so many regulations of VGC. And it's running that Dondozo variant, and Dondozo's picked up again. It dropped off earlier, and it'll be nice to see what sort of tools we can see coming from Yang Da-Wei going into that. Because you've got the Iron Bundle, which Freeze Dry now hits super effectively into Dondozo. Rillaboom with its meadow play and its grassy terrain, and it's already really high damage output. It's going to hit quite strong with that Dondozo, even with +2. And overall, the rest of the team, you can kind of just work around it. Arcanine's quite a strong Pokemon. Roaring Moon can put strong acrobatics down. If not, it can try and work through some of its attacks, because Dondozos are starting to stop running their water type attacks, so you can terror away and rely on not being hit or affected by Dragon type Order Up, or by an Earthquake coming your way. So we're going to see how they parallel each other, given they both know how Dondozo should be working, and how it goes forward in these styles of matchups. With Dondozo, you'd want to say outbox it and prevails for that victory.
So definitely a lot of options from Da-Wei's side of the field. We've got positional control and fake out, and everything that Kana just mentioned. Let's take a quick look at what Joaquin has. This Ninetales Glamora really playing hard into Dondozo's ability to stall for turns as Toxic Spikes goes up, along with that Shinpao Dragonite offense, which we know and love and fear so well.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, as people call it, the 2-2-2 Dondozo, because everyone in their style of play will have something for somewhere. This one has the Glamora Ninetales, so you have a bit of a cut bulky mode alongside your Tatsugiri Dondozo, and then of course Shinpao Dragonite. If you lead with it, you can remove 2 threats and then have Tatsugiri Dondozo come in later in the game, or the other way around, let Dondozo do its thing and then have 2 really fragile Pokemon left in the back for your opponent to face down 2 of the strongest Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet format. Of course, championing that as well is Joaquin with these amazing accomplishments, with finalists, champions across the board, and of course this year rounding it up with a nice top 4 at the Santiago Regional Championships, which means they're no stranger to facing in to these sort of players who have a very, very strong prowess to them. Might be no stranger to these unorthodox teams, where Latin America is also known for being a little bit more isolated from the rest of the VGC world as well, and will have their own take on these funky teams, or weird niches and weird techs that would normally be unseen by the rest of the player base.
Joaquin definitely an expert in some of the play styles in his region with this approach with the Dondozo, and this sort of very different perspective on the game, with those perspectives of modular pairs of 2 Pokemon and really defensive cores. And it's really interesting to see these 2 spheres of very different thought about Pokemon colliding, with Da-Wei's team and with Joaquin's team, with Argentina versus Taiwan. I'm really excited to see how these completely different, valid and interesting perspectives on the game interact with each other as we jump into the match.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see how they do work well with each other, because when you have something that's super bulky firing off into something that's super strong, it's going to be a David versus Goliath, really. Someone has got to break at some point, whether that be a crit, a high roll, or toxic spikes doing their toll. But that comes down to how these players do proceed into the matchups, because Game Run is ready for us to go into. As we have the Gamora and the Ninetales coming on out on the front, alongside that Arcanine plus Iron Bundle coming out for Da-Wei.
I think that this Iron Bundle is going to be a really crucial facet of this matchup. I don't think I can overstate that enough. It has the ability to outspeed everything on Joaquin's side of the field. It has the ability to go for that Icy Wind, which in combination with the dynamic speed means this Arcanine could prevent Aurora Veil from going up from the Ninetales. Ninetales just won't have a chance to attack if Icy Wind connects. At the same time, maybe Glamora is going to be really important for Joaquin. It has a lot of really powerful damage options into these two Pokemon. It's really difficult to target it safely because of that toxic debris. So I'm very interested to see sort of how Joaquin's able to leverage that particular tool, knowing that this Iron Bundle is a really difficult threat for him to handle.
It is a very big threat, and as you said there, it's just going to go for an Icy Wind and try and get some sort of ball rolling. And by dropping the speed of both these Pokemon, you allow whatever's in the back to outspeed them should they have to put that pressure down. But it does also mean that you can get that rock off a lot faster, but unfortunately you miss the Gamora, but at the same time there is that fortunate nature, but because you missed the Gamora, there is no toxic spikes going on the field, but nonetheless there is a poison going off at least once this battle, and that is the double poison from that ever so common Mortal Spin, putting that pressure and that ticking time bomb on to both of these Pokemon.
Very impressed by the Ninetales there. That was a Choice Banded Rock Slide, and it just took that like it was nothing, even though it was super effective. Da-Wei definitely still has some options going into future games, like threatening a Flare Blitz there maybe would be enough damage to get through, but that's really important for Joaquin to set up those turns of Poison Tick on these Pokemon, to have Aurora Veil for the next 7 turns going forwards. There's just so much bulk on that side of the field, and sort of looking at the team sheets and not knowing how Pokemon were trained, it seems to me that Da-Wei has a lot of offense, but we're very much going to see how that plays out here.
We are going to have to see how that plays out, because it is just, a team has become even bulkier from this Aurora Veil, and the strongest Pokemon in the world aren't going to break through something as bulky as a Dondozo behind an Aurora Veil, bar maybe a crit, or bar maybe a very, very well-rehearsed few attacks. But, of course, in order to stop that, you could just get rid of the Pokemon that are going to be doing that damage. With Iron Bundle dropping there, that is one of those special attacking threats that was putting pressure onto that Dondozo, gone out of the way. And Dondozo, if it does come in, is now really happy in front of a lot of these physical attackers, given how strong it is in its physical defense, as well as the fact that if you can outbulk something, you can just get this order-up boost after order-up boost and just make your way to a swift and clean win. But that's going to say that you can maybe break through it and try and get yourself for it. You have to see how both these players know their Dondozo matchup in this style of play.
As you mentioned, losing the strong special attacker on Da-Wei's side of the field is pretty crucial. I think especially so because the strong special attacker on Joaquin's side of the field is still around and quite happy. That, I believe, a Hydro Pump missed into that slot earlier with the Iron Bundle, and I think Joaquin is ready to make use of that, in that the Glamora is really set up strongly to be able to do a lot of damage on its own. It's still got more than half of its health, so a Rock Slide won't finish it off. And the Dondozo is here and on the field and ready to start buying time with those poison turns or doing a lot of damage in its own right.
Yeah, it's going to find out what they can do with it, because right now you have that free reign to switch into Tatsugiri. You have that ability to just get your commander boost going and wreak havoc on this field. Having access to Earthquake as well mean that both these Pokemon are going to be hit by it, one of which is going to be 4 times super effective. It means that you have no pressure on what attacks you go for, and even if you don't go for the Earthquake, you have that order up, which is going to go super effective into this Roaring Moon, which isn't going to appreciate it, especially at that +2 environment. And there is that Tatsugiri coming on in, so Dondozo is going to be doing its own little thing for the rest of the game. We all know what happens when Dondozo gets to this point. It either wins outright, or it sits there for a while and does its thing, trying to not be knocked out. Obviously, hyper-offensive team...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, a hyper-offensive team should break through it, but to see if that is the pace it is going to go for, because this is a bulky Dondozo right now.
I was just about to agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't know where Da-Wei is going to be able to find the damage to break through this Dondozo at +2 defense, +2 special defense, 6 turns of Aurora Veil left. We're going to watch this knockoff. Does maybe 10%. Getting rid of the leftovers is great, but there's just so much this Dondozo can still do. As the amount of damage it's doing in return while escalating its own stats is just so huge.
Huge damage, and you can get rid of your weakness to dragon typing, but a critical hit can say much more than that, knocking down this Royal Moon to on top of the poison down to the red within the space of a turn. As you said, getting rid of that leftovers is going to be a bit of a good pace setter, because you're knowing that the Dondozo isn't healing as much as it wants to over these next few turns. But when you've got that Rillaboom in the back as well, you're just giving that Dondozo even more to work with, because it's going to be healing itself up. Rillaboom's going to possibly, it's going to get poisoned from the Toxic Spike set down earlier. So it's just now in that case where, Dondozo can prevail. It's going to enjoy having this healing back, and it's going to enjoy not taking very much damage. Besides maybe a super powerful Wood Hammer putting pressure on it down the line, its Tailwind goes up, allowing that Rillaboom to have a bit more pressure on it in terms of the speed as well.
So there's speed control, there's pressure with the type advantage from Rillaboom right now, but with Terrestrialization still available on Joaquin's side of the field, I don't know how Da-Wei breaks a strong Dragon-type Pokemon with the attacks that he has and the attackers that he's got available, especially because of the Iron Bundle going down earlier. As we watch, he's got such a short timer to do it, as this poison keeps ticking down and the Dondozo keeps doing so much damage every turn that it's still on the field.
It's just doing so much damage, and if it's not doing it directly, it's doing it through the effect of that poison, which is just going to just put everything onto a null and void point, because you can switch so much, you can attack so much, but if the Dondozo is going to outlive you, it's just going to let the poison do the job for it. And that's why these Dondozo Glimmora teams are so powerful, because you can have Glimmora either poison something with Mortal Spin, or you can poison it with the effect of the Toxic Spikes that get set down, get the Aurora Veil up, make sure you're taking hits on that Glimmora so you're chipping things down, and then Dondozo can come in safe and sound with Tatsugiri in the back and just sit there for a while. It does offer Terrestrialize right now, so it is going to take some hits a bit better, especially of that Dragon typing, because it is going to enjoy taking these Wood Hammers even more now. And if you start going things like Earthquake, yes, it is weakened by grassy terrain, but this Arcanine, it's not going to enjoy seeing it because of its weaknesses. And it just feels like Joaquin has Da-Wei pinned here, because no matter what switches in, no matter what does damage, Dondozo has a way to deal with it.
Yeah, I think you've said this exactly right. Just Joaquin's played this wonderful, just like slow build to just a perfect board position here. I think Da-Wei maybe is going to be able to get some information about how much damage his attacks are doing, maybe to be able to tell if that Arcanine still had Terra Fairy available, would it be able to do a lot of damage? But as we watch here with the attacks that he has available for this game, I think even with critical hits, I'm not sure how he's going to be able to break this Dondozo before the poison comes through. So I think players are going to have to start thinking about that next game and how Da-Wei is going to be able to stop this Dondozo from being able to set up the way that it has this thus far, or if Joaquin's going to be able to come up with some clever ways to be able to keep doing exactly the same thing and win with this game plan that we know is so powerful.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hard uphill battle for Da-Wei. If not, the hill has been reached, you've gotten so far, and you think it's all over. Dondozo is just the beast at the top there. With the Royal Moon on so little HP, not even the Grass Training seems to save it there, just because of what Dondozo is throwing out. And Da-Wei does look to want to finish the game here and now. Learn the room, get a bit of information going into their pocket, and just say, I've learned what happens. Iron Bundle's a good lead, like we saw how much pressure put down, but just the combination of the snow giving that defense boost to the Ninetales, alongside the pressure of if you Rock Slide into a Glimmora, you're giving them those free Toxic Spikes. It was just a very, very difficult situation to actually just maneuver, because either way, something good was happening, but something bad was also happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think that, I don't often say this, but it really felt like the very first turn set the tone of that entire game. Being able to see that Ninetales got the complete, like the immediate survival on that Rock Slide just totally changed the options that Da-Wei had for the entire rest of the game. I'm really curious to see I'm cheating a little with looking at the screen, but I promise I was curious about this before. I think that Goldengo is a really interesting adjustment that Da-Wei has on his side of the field. I think that even with the snow boosting the defense on Ninetales' side of the field, there are few things that it wants to take less than a steel type attack, and especially a steel type special attack. So I think that Da-Wei does have tools for offense, and it's just a matter of figuring out which ones will work effectively, and Joaquin figuring out the right ways to be able to work around any of them.
That is very true, and it's just the toolbox nature of both of these teams where they both want to throw down damage as much as possible. And the Dondozo one is like you have that toolbox of you either have that stall mode where you set up the screens and allow Dondozo to bulk out, or you have that completely destroy things and then that Dondozo comes in. And given we're seeing a very offensive team coming out from Da-Wei, both of those modes work, which if you can stop their offense, then you're not taking damage on Dondozo. And if you can break through that offense being fragile with the two stronger Chien-Pao Dragonite, there's then, again, nothing that can do damage to the Dondozo, if even you get to the Dondozo at that point, given how strong these two Pokemon are. So it's going to come down to if there's a change on both sides. And like you said, like Goldengo, is it can get so far, once that Dondozo comes in, it wants to switch to replenish its special attack stat, then do some more damage down the line to try and then fire off some super strong Shadow Balls and get out that choice lock as well.
Well, so there's one really interesting facet that I think we haven't gotten to talk about yet in Joaquin's team. The Dondozo that he's using is unaware, which normally is really helpful because it prevents your opponent from setting up. But in the specific case of facing down a Goldengo, that could actually be really difficult. If Joaquin goes for the Terra Dragon and loses the water type resistance to Steel, that gives so many options for Da-Wei with that, just making use of the unaware and using it against Joaquin. So I'm really curious to see if that Goldengo comes, and if so, sort of what it's able to make use of, versus there's absolutely still options, like you mentioned, of Joaquin sort of like leveraging it, locking into the wrong move.
That is very true, but of course, we actually see a bit of a mix and match coming up from this lead here with the Dondozo coming in, and that's something that you don't see very, very often, because you'd think if you want your super bulky Pokemon, why would you have it next to a Pokemon that cuts its defense in half? Well, Dondozo is one of those Pokemon where even if its defense is cut in half, it's still perfectly fine given how high its defense is. But with the combination of a strong physical attacker on the field and next to a strong special attacker, that could put a bit of pressure on this Dondozo and maybe force that early switch in of the Tatsugiri to at least have an essence of taking those hits, if not just sit there for a bit and say, you got your really good lead off, but I have this one trick up my sleeve, which is allowing Dondozo to do what it does best. And both these Pokemon being hit by Earthquake is not a very, very nice thing for Da-Wei to be thinking.
Yeah, the threat of the Earthquake from Dondozo with the sort of Ruin Boost or with Tatsugiri switching in is so difficult for this Goldengo to manage. I think Joaquin maybe was thinking about how can I handle this Goldengo, and this is a wonderful lead to do so. We are seeing Da-Wei commit to this terrestrialization of the Goldengo to be able to do as much damage as it can with these Make It Rains. As we mentioned before, it's not too worried about the special attack drop against these Pokemon. Dondozo just going for a Protect, so Goldengo's safe from that Earthquake for now. But I think that pressure continues to build up as we look at the rest of this game. There's just so many options from Joaquin's side of the field.
There are loads of options, and it's just what Dondozo in this 2-2-2 variant does so well. It can switch into anything and still have something good to go for it. Reducing Make It Rain goes off, and naturally you expect Chien-Pao is going to go down his Focus Sash in that predicament. But it does also give that pace setter of, now that Joaquin knows what choice lock that is on the Goldengo, it knows it can quite comfortably sit there for a bit because it is still a water type and doesn't want to terrestrialize into that dragon typing, especially again when you have a dragon type facing it down. Not that it's got any dragon type moves, but it's still nice to know that you're making sure the damage is minimal coming from this Goldengo, even with how powerful it can be.
Yeah, I think that making sure that the Dondozo is the right type into this Goldengo is a wonderful adjustment from Joaquin's side of the field to be able to handle this threat, especially with setting it up with this Tatsugiri. There's just so much potential with specifically the moves that it has with that Earthquake. This Goldengo is very much going to be threatened by this Dondozo and not the other way around by any stretch of the imagination. I think the Roaring Moon's also not particularly happy to be staring down the possible order up. And we are just going to see a fairly defensive switch from Da-Wei here to get that Goldengo out of the field and bring out something that's going to be able to handle Dondozo a little better in that Iron Bundle.
Yeah, Iron Bundle, yep. It has a really good defense stat. It can probably take its time. with this Dondozo, especially that knockoff going through and making sure that there is no item on the Dozo anymore. But in return, you do see that Order Up does so much damage. He gets a clean one-hit KO onto the Roaring Moon, which does allow Da-Wei to get something in which is equally as powerful, such as his Golden Go coming back in, and is going to be staring happily at that low special defense stat that does come with the Dondozo, especially alongside the freeze dry that can come out from this Iron Bundle. Dondozo is going to be put a bit of pressure on it because it has to protect in this turn to see what is the choice lock of choice and what is going to be the option for coming out from the Iron Bundle to make sure to see if it's going for an Icy Wind to slow it down or just pure pressure onto it.
Yeah, so Dondozo has this really safe protect here to be able to get that information. Da-Wei's been doing a great job of getting moments of really strong momentum, but it's tough when facing down Dondozo because you need not just moments of like strong momentum like we have here, but like a whole game plan that's going to consistently have momentum. And I think now that this Dondozo has been able to see what the Goldengo locked into, now that it knows it's not the Steel type attack but the Electric type attack, maybe it can just go ahead and Terastallize now and become a Dragon type. It's really hard for Da-Wei to be able to cover both options, and I think Joaquin is just doing a great job of keeping that possibility open and trying to time exactly when the Dondozo is the right types to be defensive in the right situations.
That is very, very true. With Dondozo just being one of those Pokemon that, yeah, it's bulky as it is, or has its Terastalliation to help it out, you can just pick whatever time you want to go for that Terastalliation and, you know, find its defensive move out, as you said. If we do see a Terra is actually coming out for it, so it's going to be taking some hits a bit better. Not that freeze dry, because regardless if it was Water type or a Dragon type, it was going to take super effective damage from a super duper strong Pokemon. But you also have that knowledge in the back of your head where, because it's open team sheet, the players will know there's a possibility of, you know, 3 different moves coming out from this Golden Go going into it. But going into that Terra Dragon, it does take a hit from something like a Thunderbolt a lot better. But Earthquake does come on through, and it's probably going to be the Grace that gets it, but it lives on 24 HP. The Thunderbolt goes off, but isn't do as much as wanted because of its new Dragon typing.
Such a really commanding demonstration by Dondozo. It was able to do so much damage to the Goldengo. Oh, but if that's a critical hit from the freeze dry, that gets rid of the Dondozo. That might change this whole match. What?
That just changes the path of everything. The low, I want to say the low or like, you know, perfectly calculated calc onto that slot there with the living on the Golden Go onto that critical hit is very, very unfortunate. They got that knockout there, but it still gives a lot more pace to Da-Wei, especially that Thunderbolt hitting through that Tatsugiri like a blocker, because it just goes down to half health, even with that Dragon typing helping a bit with that Electric weakness. But now you've got something that's 4 times weak to this Iron Bundle, and then something's got to come in, and you can still spam Thunderbolts with it being Choice Specs Golden Go. It's still going to do a lot of damage, as we've seen just from that one attack there.
This probably isn't the situation that Da-Wei was expecting to be in on this turn, but being able to have Icy Wind plus Thunderbolt is a really cool option for just having strong coverage into this match. And I think seeing Joaquin's last Pokemon, there aren't a lot of offensive options here, maybe except for the Tatsugiri that have a decent amount of health left. So it's going to be quite a challenge for Joaquin to be able to find the right tools to finish off, because this Iron Bundle is able to have so much health going into this next turn.
It is going to be quite safe, quite happy. Like, the Arcanine coming in just gives a bit of extra wiggle room to knock something out, especially with how strong it is. And, you know, Bundle's kind of done its job. It's got rid of the Dondozo, and it's now able to get rid of the Tatsugiri if it wants to, or just start going with the Icy Winds to make things a little bit easier to break through. An Icy Wind of its own coming out from the Ninetales, which can be very good for this Tatsugiri if it hits its Muddy Waters, because even if you're probably knocking out the Arcanine, and if you hit the Bundle, even though it's going to take the hits quite well, it still has that risk of those accuracy drops, and with some of its moves not being the most accurate, it's not going to enjoy taking those hits whatsoever. So now it comes down to one of these game situations where you're not relying purely on the damage you're doing, you're relying purely on what luck you can get and how well you maneuver around to make sure that you can favor yourself whether or not you get that luck in your hands.
I think this is one of the really interesting things about Pokemon is either player can have like a perfect game plan going into a match, but you never really know how a match is going to happen until you play out those turns. And I think both players just in a very different position than they were expecting to be. sort of looking for the right way forwards in ways that are probably not things they practiced a lot. We do see the Moonblast going off and getting a lot of damage, but the Iron Bundle being faster than Tatsugiri, even after the Icy Wind, is crucial, because that means that main attacker from Joaquin's side of the field is no more, and that Arcanine is going to have a lot of options here with that extreme speed to clean up the game, now that Joaquin's burned that terrestrialization on the Dondozo.
Yeah, it's gonna be something that's gonna be hard to break through, of course. Bundle being one of those super duper fast Pokemon, just showing why it has that pressure and presence that it does. And we saw as well the combination of the Ninetales. Right now they're a lot more bulk inclined, so the Moonblast, normally you think that this is a fragile Pokemon, it's going to knock out, but the lack of investment and possibly a bit of investment on the bundle helped out a lot there. And no special attack drop as well was really, really useful, even though it was going to 4 times effective slot. And now Da-Wei has on paper, the power to just switch out continuously to make sure that there is some sort of offensive or defensive presence there. But at the same time, a lot of these Pokemon aren't enjoying what's in front of them, especially with how low HP they're on besides the Arcanine.
Yeah, every Pokemon is so low except for Ninetales and Arcanine. Chien-Pao is going to be able to finish off that Goldengo, but I think that this might be game. This Ninetales has Icy Wind and Moonblast as its attacking options, and neither of those are going to do anything into a fire type. The Chien-Pao could normally terrestrialize into the ghost type to avoid an extreme speed, but that Dondozo went for the Dragon Terra already, so this Arcanine has a guaranteed KO on the Chien-Pao, and the Iron Bundle is going to be able to eventually finish off the Ninetales, or at least get it low enough that the extreme speeds from the Arcanine are going to finish it off. I think that Da-Wei just absolutely has the right tools to finish off this game, almost from the moment that the Tatsugiri went down.
Yeah, it just feels like once Dondozo Tatsugiri is gone, especially on a team that relies on both of those Pokemon, you are at a loss in that standoff. Of course, you can try and break yourself through and try and find a way to get the best result possible. Both these Pokemon are very, very strong, and they can do something. Like crits are always something to happen. But with Icy Wind coming out here from the Iron Bundle, you're basically just saying, you know what? You can try and protect, you can try and be offensive, but I'm fast, I'm strong. And Arcanine is now becoming faster and stronger because of your lack of speed. Ninetales goes down there, even with that snow, showing how powerful Arcanine can be. And Chien-Pao, as strong as it is, isn't going to be able to deal with these two right in front of it.
I think just so many different win conditions that Da-Wei could pursue. The Rock Slide totally works too. I think really speaking to the fact that Arcanine Hisui really has a lot of options into this matchup, even though there are 2 water types on Joaquin's side of the field. We do see a Sucker Punch come out. If that had been a critical hit, that could have changed the course of this game, but it was not, and the Freeze Dry is going to finish off that Chien-Pao regardless anyways, bringing us into a Game 3.
Bringing us to a very, very pivotal and crucial Game 3, because of course, it's one of these matchups where Dondozo has done what Dondozo does best, and Hyper Offense has done what Hyper Offense does best. So now to see who is the victor, who is the best side of that spectrum. Is it going to be the bulkier side? Is it going to be the super duper strong side? I want to say that, as much as I hate to say about it, but I think luck did play a lot in that matchup with the critical hit on the Dondozo. But I think the damage that was being thrown into it, where Da-Wei had really, really put themselves in a good position where you were hitting these special attacks into Dondozo regardless. I think it was only so long before it can stop taking those hits, and yeah, I think it was just sped up by a critical hit. So maybe it's going to be a bit of a longer game where both players going to know what position they need to be in and how they really execute it. And barring any luck again, I think it's going to be a close down to the wire match.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this third game plays in, because I think Da-Wei knows that he can't count on exactly the same strategy working again. But at the same time, I think across 2 whole games of Dondozo, the plan from Joaquin's side being, okay, Dondozo's going to sit here and take a lot of damage, it makes sense that a critical hit might happen at some point. And so I think if both players play the same way, the overwhelming odds are in Joaquin's favor, but it's not too strange that we got to a 1-1 situation here, that in one of the 2 games, Da-Wei was able to get things to work. And I'm curious to see what adjustments there are going into Game 3, because I think Da-Wei knows you've got to find another answer to that Dondozo to be able to make sure that it doesn't snowball in the ways that it has so far.
Yeah, you've got to find that remedy, you've got to find that pattern, and we have to see in this Game 3 now coming up for us if they do have that ability to do so. Of course, this is one of those two teams where you can lead with anything and it could still be something in that Dondozo team, but we do see that it's game 2 repeated. So Da-Wei thinking if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And maybe Joaquin is thinking, I have something that you don't know, as like a matchup tool that they have under their sleeve. Because even though it's OTS, there could be certain like spreads or calcs of what they don't know are going to be putting that pressure on. And with 2 super strong Pokemon right in front of you, you know that pressure is coming at you from that turn 1.
Yeah, I think just so much damage from both sides are being threatened. One really interesting thing is that Joaquin could have a totally different game plan with the same Pokemon. That's one of the really interesting facets about Dondozo. Like, he had so many plays available to him last in Game 2, and I think that he has the same tools available to him now, that like the Chien-Pao could protect and the Dondozo could go for an Earthquake. The Chien-Pao could just go for a knockout, the Dondozo could switch out, you could go for Tatsugiri right away. I think it's really difficult for Da-Wei to cover every option, and so I'm curious to see which ones he goes for and how the predictions play out on this turn.
It's going to be nice to see, and with the Terra Steel coming out, we know that straight away Da-Wei is going for this the damage mindset, because if you can break them before they can break you, then that is perfectly fine. The Protect comes out again like we saw in that last game, which means that it's not going to be taking too much damage on it. Protect on the Dondozo this time, meaning that it's going to come down to the Focus Sash on the Chien-Pao. Crunch goes into the Golden Go, not really too well into that Terra, gets a stat drop on it, which isn't the end of the world, given that you can just easily switch it out, and Dondozo doesn't mind that stat drop, which is both, I guess, unfortunate for the Dondozo, as the Focus Sash will be activated on that Chien-Pao, closing out this turn 1.
I think that's a really crucial adjustment on Joaquin's side of the field. Exact same moves from both sides, except I believe that the Crunch went into the Goldengo instead of an Ice attack going into that Roaring move. And being able to get that Goldengo, we saw last time that even at +2 attack, Dondozo could not finish off the Goldengo immediately. But now, with the Goldengo being at half health, I think even just with Sword of Ruin, if the Chien-Pao protects and the Dondozo Earthquakes, that Goldengo should go down. That feels like it gives Joaquin a lot of ways to remove one of the core offensive threats from Da-Wei's side of the field, as he's also got the other option of switching in this, I believe, Tatsugiri, and setting up the Dondozo to finish off the Goldengo with Earthquake, instead of needing to take a couple of turns to do so.
Yeah, instead of having to rely on just going the slow and peaceful route, we just see Joaquin just thinking, your Pokemon's low HP, I've seen the rolls I can get earlier, and it's just gonna go that breakdown. But you see after this, Dondozo, as fun it is, you get to see that wall of text. A switch out happens though for the Golden Go, meaning it's not taking as much damage as we thought it was going to and saving it for later, with the Arcanine coming in to drop and Intimidate, so it's not going to be overly useful. It's got it down to that only that +1. We'll see if that is crucial in run of play, but the knockoff does get rid of those leftovers, so again Dondozo lost one of those most powerful tools. As the order up goes into Arcanine, and that was a very, very good saving grace, because it allows you to keep Golden Go safe and also put pressure down with the Arcanine going something like a Rock Slide to try and spam some flinches.
It worked out really well for Da-Wei. I think the challenge being that Dondozo just undid the work of the Intimidate, but being able to get that in without having to take an Earthquake is pretty crucial. There's definitely some options to start just building up a lot of attacks into Dondozo. That's been Da-Wei's strategy the last couple of games. And I think with that knockoff, getting rid of the leftovers, that's the first step towards what Da-Wei would need for a win condition in this game. At the same time, I feel like this Dondozo is still set up so well. Tailwind's going up, so Da-Wei is going to be able to go first, but unless there's a lot of Rock Slide flinches, it might be a little bit difficult for Da-Wei to weather the storm of this Dondozo for even the duration of the Tailwind.
Yeah,
you start with a flinch slope.
I was saying, gonna pull that up about how the flinch is is one of those saving graces, and I hate to have to cast this curse it, but where there's a Rock Slide, there is a way, and of course Da-Wei is finding that way, because sometimes when you get to Dondozo, that's what you have to go for. You have to go for these cheesier, luckier tactics, and with the Terrestrialization wasted and the pressure being put down, you have to go for that. Acrobatics goes in, and I barely saw that HP bar move, showing how this Dondozo is built. Rock Slide goes in again, finally knocks it down to that yellow with no leftovers to help it out. It isn't going to be doing too much, though the Earthquake comes on through, gets a knockout onto the Arcanine, not onto that Roaring Moon. Yeah,
so 1 KO down from Joaquin's side of the field, but I think Da-Wei preserving the Goldengo is really important, and I think also being able to get the Dondozo down to half health and bring the Iron Bundle in at just a wonderful time. I think there's a world where Da-Wei is able to sort of time this Dondozo KO at a time when Tailwind is up or when Goldengo is able to finish off the Tatsugiri as well, and I think there's just a lot of momentum on Da-Wei's side of the field. All he really needed was that one flinch, and that gives him like a lot of options into this game with managing the health of the Dondozo and the timing of when it goes down.
Yeah, it's going to take that one small step that is going in favor of Da-Wei to make sure that things, you know, peter out this Dondozo here. It does go for protect, yeah, so it's just keeping itself safe for this turn, making sure it can read the room a bit. Of course, there is no leftovers there to go for that protect leftovers over and over again to make sure you get a bit of HP back. Especially in the face it's seeing right now, do know that earlier that this sort of HP level, there was, well, even higher HP level, there's that critical hit knocked at the Dondozo from the freeze dry. So that is probably going to play a part in getting a knockout now. Like, you're just under 50% HP. Freeze dry is very, very powerful. Dondozo, even with that +2, isn't known for being too spectrally bulky. So it's going to be a lot of pressure there. And by getting rid of that as well, you can go for that Thunderbolt, that Shadow Ball into the freshly opened up Tatsugiri. So it actually doesn't get the knockout, lives on a sliver, meaning that it can put its pressure down quite safely. We do see the Make It Rain is going off first and might be that key data knockout, and it is. So with Dondozo down, Da-Wei now has a new set of pressure and skill to say, okay, the biggest threat is gone. I can now revolve my Pokemon and make sure that I've got something on the field that can deal with anything you throw at me.
I really liked the way that Da-Wei handled the Dondozo this particular time around. I think that it was a really interesting way to be able to set up a good board position coming out of the Dondozo, just throwing off attacks. But this adjustment from Joaquin, bringing the Dragonite, really makes this a little bit more difficult. I was going to say if it's most of the Pokemon on that side of the field, it feels like Da-Wei has a lot of options. Here, maybe there's a way that this Dragonite's able to get the right position at the right time to be able to start throwing off extreme speeds or stomping tantrums, to sort of even this back up a little bit. I think that Joaquin still has Terrestrialization available, so either this Tatsugiri or Dragonite could lose the vulnerability to Iron Bundle's attacks, and that very much changes the way that the rest of this game could play out.
It can change how that plays out, and it's just going to come down to the second situation. Dragonite going for that Terrestrialization and finally revealing who is going to be the target for it, and it is going to its ever so popular and ever so known in the normal type Terrestrialization. With Goldengo losing its Ghost typing to opt in for that Steel Terror, it means it can be hit by the super fast moves in the Extreme Speed, but it does go into the Bundle, who takes the hit quite handily and allows it to get an Icy Wind off, which breaks down anything that can allow that speed boost. Of course, Extreme Speed being the choice lock move of choice means it is going to be going fast regardless. You see how much this does, and even at -1, the steel boost from the Terra and the choice spec means that it is doing loads and loads of damage. As Muddy Water comes out, it cleans up the Iron Bundle and luckily doesn't get that drop onto the Goldengo, who can now prevail for a little bit longer.
The Goldengo can prevail for a little bit longer, but with the Extreme Speed, with Terrestrialization, and the Choice Band on the Dragonite, I don't think it's going to be much longer. Especially with the Qianpao in the back, it feels like there's a lot of options for Joaquin's side of the field. There's so much priority, so even though this Roaring Moon normally excels in making sure that its side of the field goes first with that Tailwind, that really isn't going to help against a lot of the priority moves, and all of its attacks are single target, so maybe it can finish off the Dragonite, but I don't think there's a way for Da-Wei not to leave the Tatsugiri slot open to be able to get an attack off.
It's going to be one of those complicated ones, and of course, with the status of the field right now, I do purely agree with you. Like, with the Pokemon that are here, something is going to be knocking out, and it's one of those like game situations where players like, I can hit into anything because something is going down, something is going to live, and by allowing the Tatsugiri to live with the Pokemon that is doing the most pressure in terms of super effectiveness, puts all that damage down. Of course, you could rely on Draco Meteor missing, but it does not do that there. And Joaquin does take this game free, and allows for Argentina to take a win over Taiwan, extending themselves one step closer to that top 4 bracket.